Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Drew Pearson. You are listening to the Pearson Perspective. This is a deep dive into the stories and mindsets of successful business operators and investors. Let's go have some fun. All right, today we're going to have a little bit of fun. This is just a solo episode, really wrapping up season 2. And what I want to do today is talk about what we have learned from interviewing almost 25 guests. What similarities can we find in their mindsets and their tactics? Maybe talk about some things that were surprising that I did not expect. But before we get going, I really just want to thank everybody. I've had a ton of fun on this experiment for the last 2 seasons. It's been successful and productive. We're going to keep it going. So if you've enjoyed it, share it with your friends. And, man, thanks so much for your time, for tuning in and listening. You know, we've interviewed almost 24 guests now, really from a variety of backgrounds. We've had guys who have their MBA. We have guys who didn't complete college. We had guys who worked W-2 jobs and then got into real estate or business ownership. We have guys that never had a W-2. And you know, what is so cool about all this is there is no direct path. There is no one way to get into it. But the real commonality is you got to bet on yourself. You got to go all in. If you're waiting for someone else to validate you, to say, hey, this is a good idea, I encourage you to do it, you're going to be let down or you're going to be waiting too long. All these guys and gals, they took the leap and took action and made it happen. You know, I think back to guys like Nick Legia, our first real guest, engineering degree, great degree, goes to work, and all of his coworkers are just getting excited about Blue Jean Fridays every other month. And he looks at himself and says, I can't do this. You know, I've got more to give. I can help serve other people, more people, by getting into entrepreneurship. Takes a couple of years, does his due diligence, buys his first franchise. Fast forward a decade later, you know, he has dozens of stores across a half a dozen states and almost 200 employees. And what's so cool is the things I love about Nick are, here, one, he's kept his expenses low. His lifestyle is low, which allows him to reinvest the money into new businesses. And he's very specific with his time. And so he has time to reinvest in himself through reading, talking with others, exploring mentally, traveling. And it's a continuous learner. And that's one thing that I think we can really draw across the spectrum is being curious and always learning, whether that's learning in your specific field or learning in outside fields. That has shown up time and time again across our guests. Some of our guests, you know, like Chase Burns, his family was in an adjacent business. He opted to get into a business. In his words, you know, a business is either running away from you or running towards you. And what I think he meant by that was, you know, are there tailwinds to your business? Is your business growing? Or are there headwinds where you're kind of facing declining margins, declining demand? And so he took everything that he learned from his family, some of their people in the back office, and moved from a business that was kind of declining to a business that was on the uptick, which was car washes. And they've done fantastic at that. Another huge thing I think we can draw from the business ownership side, and I think of Gaines Garrett. You know, he currently owns and manages 3 separate businesses in separate industries, and you think, golly, how could you do that? How do you keep your sanity? And it really comes down to clear vision, clear mission, clear core values. And if you can get the right people in the right seats on the bus, you really can do some incredible things. And so the last thing I think we learned was just the importance of people, having the right people on your team, being upfront and honest with them, encouraging them, showing them where the standard is. If they're below the standard, coach them up. If they can't get there, maybe they're just not the right person for the bus. It's not like they're the wrong person. They just might not be the right person at this time in their lives for where this team is headed, and that's okay. And kind of gently moving them on to somewhere else. Maybe you give them a letter of recommendation to another field of work. I think it's really important to treat folks with dignity, with kindness, even if they're not the right person for your team. But man, it's really just been a ton of fun as we look back. We've talked a lot about real estate ownership and a lot about small businesses, and those are two things I'm just really passionate about. And in order to really excel at those at scale, we need people and we need teams. And so I think that's where we'll continue to focus our time in the coming seasons. People and teams. What does it mean to build culture? What does it mean to grow and scale in the right way? Another thing that really jumps out at me as we've interviewed all these guests is the persistence required to really break through that ceiling. None of our guests, whether it was folks like Jack McClarty, almost a decade in the finance world before he really got to where he is, it just takes years and years of slogging it out to have any small measure of success. There's that quote, we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. I know that's been true for me, and it really for almost each and every person we've had on the show. It just takes 7 to 10 years to get anywhere with a concentration. So that's one thing I remind myself and anybody else is, man, just keep at it. Keep grinding away. Oftentimes, it's not the best that succeed. It's the guys who just never quit. It's the guys who just keep showing up day in and day out. And before you know it, there's no one else around you, and you're near the top of the mountain. So, to wrap up this episode, if I could give any 19-year-olds advice out there, 22-year-olds advice, to me there's a clear correlation between an easily defined path, however hard that path may be, and outside success and results. Oftentimes, success is had by taking the road less traveled, by really getting in the weeds, figuring out a product or a service, a good or a need to satisfy. So for those in college, for those at the end of high school, and folks ask you, well, what do you want to do with your life? And you just shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know. I'm here to say that's okay. It's okay not to have this clear 10-year path of what we're going to do. But what is important is taking action, taking responsibility, and taking the risk. I think you'll be shocked at what will happen in 24 to 36 months when all the weight is on your shoulders and you've got to make it happen. Because 9 times out of 10, you will make it happen. There may be a failure or two along the way, but as so many of our guests have pointed out, those failures are just simply stepping stones. They're a part of the journey, a part of the process to figuring it out. There is no set rule book or playbook in business. The key is, how can we serve our customers? How can we have a team in order to serve our customers in a scalable way? How can we price our product, good or service in a way that allows us to serve others, stay competitive, and have a profit so that we can reinvest in the company? Guys, thanks so much for listening today. It's really been a blast these last 2 seasons. I've learned a ton. I hope that you all have learned a ton, or at least we've made road trips a little easier to get through. We hope to have another at least 2 seasons. We've got another 30 guests kind of lined up on tap. We're going to see where this goes. It's been a ton of fun. I hope you all have a great day. I will really appreciate it if you'd leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you're listening or watching to this show. Thanks so much for joining us on this audio adventure. Let's go have some fun.